My name is Dr. Alfons Huber. I'm the conservator of this collection since 1983. My job is to take care of the conservatorial state of the instruments. The concept of the collection is very easy. It's a chronological concept and it starts around 1500, and every room is dedicated to an important personality which lived, that was important for Austria. The goal of every museum is to collect objects, to take care of them, to conserve, and to make research. Some of these aspects I can demonstrate on one of our most important objects. This is a cithern built by Girolamo da Virchi, builder of northern Italy in Brescia in 1574. And the instrument itself stems from the most important collection in Schloss Amras. The Viennese Collection is important because the core of our collection stems from a private collection, which the first inventory was made in 1596. And because of this inventory, with 55 entries, we may say that the Viennese Collection is the oldest collection of musical instruments in the world. And this cithern, if you look at the wood of this cithern, it is unique. So for many, many years I thought it is a spruce, fir or spruce. How is this pattern of this of the grain, how is it possible? And a few years before I got a very similar wood. And with this wood I can demonstrate two things in one. The one is that we don't know what happens in the wood, in the forest, that single trees grow in such a unique way. Yeah? It is not identical, but it is very close. This wood is also very close to this old one. And what I can demonstrate here is technology. When we see an instrument, we are thinking on the one side on aesthetic. Oh, it's beautiful, it's made with gilt, and on the other side we think of aesthetic of the sound. But we forget that 90% of a musical instrument is technology and has nothing to do with aesthetics. The sound is the result of technology. And what I can demonstrate you here is one single aspect which became very important. This is the attempt. We must change our place to another showcase. This, we call it a terzett, so 3 pieces of viole da gamba, came from another important collection from Castle Qatari, and this is the second core of the Viennese Collection, the Qatari Collection. About 170 musical instruments are coming from the Castle Qatari. And our collection of recorders, we keep 25% of all preserved Renaissance recorders in the world. About 50 Renaissance recorders we have from Qatari. And we wanted to reconstruct the technique how these viole da gamba were made. Because on the first view, you think, oh, it has an arch, the belly is carved like the modern violin. But if one looks very carefully, you can see that the grain in the middle of the joint of the belly, you see that the grain is running like this. And this tells us that the belly is bent and carved. It is a technique Simone Zopf, she and another teacher in Hallstatt, from them I have learned this technique. How was it made? You take two plates, but not in the usual way like a violin is made from a wedge, but thin plates are laid into hot water. And then the thin plates are clamped together. And here, with a wedge, the plates are forced in their new form. And so the arch is formed. The first step is to get this basic form, then it is glued together. And the advantage, the big advantage of this technique is that the grain is running through the form. In a modern violin, or in a cello, or in a viola da braccio, the grain is running straight, and here it is cut in all directions. So it is much weaker. This belly is much stronger because the grain of the wood is uncut. It's a very risky technique. You see what happened. We hadn't enough patience, and so it cracked. The failure is also a severe teacher. So you have an idea, you try something, and then it doesn't work. And then you must again think what was wrong with my technique. And we have learned that you must wait. Yeah? You must make it very slowly. You must take your clamps at the outside and not here. Yeah? Otherwise, if you press it here, then it cracks. In the second and in the third attempt, we succeeded, and the instrument was built, and it's now in the hand of a musician. So at least it worked. Normally restored instruments. We pass over this spinet. This spinet also stems from Castle Qatari. You see here the castle in Italy near Padua, and 300 years before, this spinet stood in this castle. So if I close the case, it looks very modest. Yeah, it's dirty, the painting came off, you have damages, mechanical damages, and if you see it like this, you say, oh, it's an old box, yeah? And then if you open it, you see, oh gosh, it's a musical instrument. And if you open the lid, you see a very fine virginal or spinet. It is signed and dated by Ioannis Celestini in Venice, Venezia, 1608. And with this information, it suddenly became very important and very interesting. And this special instrument for us is an example of undeveloped conservation. Everything what you see here is more or less unchanged information. It has normal damages by aging, it has cracks caused by shrinkage of the wood, the veneer, this beautiful rose, the glue was weakened, and so some parts came off, but it was not dramatic. And after the conservation process, we were thinking about the stringing material, about the pitch, and then decisions were made which I think were typical how this collection works. We are in a very close relationship and exchange between the scientific curators, the musicologists, and the conservation workshop. And there are many open questions. Which material, which string material, which pitch? How is the stress on the string? Pitch and stress, they belong together. And how was the pitch in this period? We know it was made in Venice. And now I come back to our recorders, which are in the case behind you. These recorders were made by a very important firm in Venice, the Bassano family. They were very busy and clever. They worked in Venice and in London and had a huge manufacture of woodwind instruments. As I told before, we have 48 Renaissance recorders of the period, and with a recorder of this time keeps the original pitch. You can't change the pitch of a Renaissance recorder which is made from one single piece of wood. So if you start to calculate the pitch of the recorders made in Venice around 1600, does it match with the Spinet? And then you get answers. And the answer is, yes, the pitch of this period was a half note higher than normal pitch today. So the A1, middle A, is not 440 vibrations per second, but 465. And if you start calculating, what happens if this Spinet has a pitch of 465, I need iron strings. It's a very complex process to find pitch and tensile pickup and all these physical, technological features. To make it short, the pitch of the Spinet matches the pitch of the recorders, and with the viola da gamba. So what I wanted to tell is, in this single special case, all information doesn't contradict. We are in unison, if I may say. We are in congruence with technology, musicology, and conservatorial aspects. The result which comes out is sound. It is sound which doesn't contradict our knowledge, our historical knowledge of the period. The only we can say is, I like this sound or I dislike this sound. But we can't decide is correct. Yeah? It is what it is. It is the result of a technological structure which is in congruence with our scientific knowledge. That's all we can say. Most of our visitors say, "Oh, that's beautiful." Yeah? I agree, it is beautiful, but I can't promise you that it's original. The oldest instruments which are preserved are around from 1500. We have perhaps some fragments from recorders from Stone Age or so, but well-preserved instruments are mostly from the 16th century. We don't know what happened before. And 10 years ago, I got knowledge of a document, a very important document, the oldest source where the word clavichord arrives is the testament book of the city of Vienna. On December 7th of the year 1396, a certain Johannes von Zwickau donated his clavichordium to the son of a certain Niklas Berghofer. We don't know the protagonists, but this is the oldest source where the word clavichord appears. And the question was, this clavichord, how could it be looked out? And it is funny that we have more documents from the 15th century about clavichord making than in the next 200 years. All what you see here, every detail, not the bridge, not the form of the bridge, but all other details are based on an historical document before 1450. The outer case, for example, you see here on this picture, which obviously is a little bit later, but we like the design. So we copied the design and projected it onto the older construction. The idea, the mathematical idea behind this clavichord is this geometrical figure. It is a square which side is 8 parts. This square of 8 also is the basic of the chessboard. And you know that the chessboard is a very old mathematical idea with its 64 places. The square with the side 8 is a very mathematically and geometrically very interesting figure, because here the rational and the irrational mathematical word, they cut, they cross. Rationality are all the rational fractions, ratios, proportions. And you see here, for example, the so-called Pythagorean triangle. 3 by 4 by 5 is the easiest, the simplest Pythagorean triangle. But also irrationality can be seen. For example, the root. This length here, mathematically exactly, is the root of 89. But the root of 89 can be expressed in a simplified fraction, 66 by 7. And 66 by 7 is 3 times the circle figure p you need for calculating the circumference of a circle. You will ask me, gosh, what had this to do with a musical instrument? The measurements of the case are developed from this figure, because if you take the radius of the inner circle and you clap it out, you get the length with 14 parts. And so you have 3 parts in the width and 14 parts the length, and this is the measurement of the clavichord. But it is 14 parts, but the 14 parts are double inches, and if you double it, you have 28 inches length, and the 3 parts are 6 inches wide. So the case measurements are 6 by 28 inches. Why 6 and why 28? 6 is the easiest of the perfect numbers. Perfect numbers are the sum of their fractions. Also 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6. And 28 is the second perfect number. 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 7 plus 14. These are the partials of 28. And 28 is a very beautiful figure. It's also 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7. And 7 is, in music, is a very important figure because you have 7 notes per octave. You see, in this time, around 1400, mathematics and music were linked together very close and very intensively. We have spoken about pitch. What is the pitch of this instrument? Here we have another woodcut from around 1500, and here we see 3 pipes and 3 lengths. We can also say they are string length. And what we see here, oh, it's again the 6. And we have the basic ratios, the basic proportions of all musical instruments, all musical systems. All musical systems all over the world can be based on the figures 1 by 2, 2 by 3, and 3 by 4. 1 by 2 is the octave, 2 by 3 is the 5th, and 3 by 4 is the 4th. All musical systems all over the world, in China, in Japan, in the Western music, have these frame intervals of the octave, the 5th, and the 4th. In these figures, this information is hidden. Nobody speaks about octaves and 5th and 4th, but it is without words, it's written as a picture story. 3 by 6 is 1 by 4. You can shorten it. And at least you see also the pair of compasses to make a circle, to make the parts, to make geometric figures. You need a circle. It is documented here. And you have the length. And this picture tells you without any word the basic principle of pitch and string length, which was kept in instrument making workshops until the beginning of the 19th century. String length is pipe length of an organ pipe. And it is realized here. The basic string has the same length, yeah, the vibrating length of the organ pipe is from the mouth to the top, and the vibrating length of the lowest string is identical and it has the same sound. And here again, it's technology. Sound is the result of technology and not an idea in the head of a maker. It has to do with physics and with mathematics and arithmetic and with geometry. As a joke, I say it's like experimental archaeology. Yeah? Archaeology is if you dig out something from the ground, parts of a flute recorder, of bone and so. But we reconstruct instruments from a lost period where we have no single preserved instrument. But if we put together a puzzle of information and ideas, and as I said before, the instrument itself, the result, is in unison with, let's say, 10 documents of the 15th century. And many of these documents are instructions from teachers to their pupils how to construct a clavichord. These instructions are focused on the partition of this rack. Yeah? Here, the exact position of the tone, where the tone, the single tone, may I say, sleeps in the string. Yeah? If you touch this string here, you get this tone. If you touch the same, on the same string here, it's this tone. On the same string, here you have 4 positions, 4 tones are sleeping in the string, and you must find the correct position. And these contemporary instructions are focused how to divide the string in the correct manner, that at least you have the correct strings. I can't play music of the 15th century, I can just imitate it a bit. So if you like, this is original sound of the early Renaissance or the late Gothic time. What you see, what is built, what is measured is in coincidence with all what we know of this time. It's not fantasy. You can read it in some books, and many people are thinking like that a musical instrument which doesn't sound is dead. And that is a big nonsense, because especially the bad preserved objects bear a lot of unchanged information. This harpsichord, for example, is one of the most important keyboard instruments of our collection. Although its appearance is so poor and damaged, it stood for 150 years at the attic of a mill house. 150 years under the roof. So it was, the rain was in it, and I had it for 6 years in my workshop. Not every day working on it, but it was a huge work to bring together all the parts. The stand, all in parts. The sound port broken into 9 parts. So it was a big conservation work to make it able to stand in the exhibition. But why is the instrument so important? On the one hand, it is the oldest Viennese harpsichord. And it was changed twice. It was built 1696, and 7 years later it was changed for the first time. And now we must go into detail here. You see here the trace of the first bridge. When it was built, it was a very traditionally built, old-fashioned, I could say, late Renaissance or early Baroque harpsichord. So it was entirely out of fashion when it was built. So 7 years later, another maker, a Viennese organ maker, Franz Walter, rebuilt it and made a new bridge, made new ribs, and transformed it into a more or less modern harpsichord of the period. This instrument is just a conservation, a strict conservation. Every part is put together, and we avoided to glue back the soundboard. Normally you close an instrument entirely, but in this special case we wanted to make the inside, the construction and the soundboard visible. Yeah? And here we can study the old rib positions here. Yeah? You see the positions of the original ribs. These 2 ribs are original, but the other ribs are replacement from 1705. You see here the remark of the repair here. And you can read a second repair remark from 1726. And now the story is getting very interesting. The instrument in the last state, when it was found, is not anymore a harpsichord, it is a pianoforte. And if this date, 1726, and the change into the pianoforte matches, then this is also the oldest pianoforte made in Austria. So it's a really unique instrument, and you will understand suddenly why playing conditions is a nonsense. Which of the 3 important stages should be sound? The first one, which is the oldest Viennese harpsichord, or the second, when it was a Profi harpsichord from Baroque period or the earliest Hammerflügel. By this reason, we decided we make a copy, we make a reconstruction, look at the position of the bridge, yeah, and the bridge is divided, or it was divided, yeah, and when you see that, then you understand what happened with their reconstruction. So, holes. They ate the wood, they have eaten holes into the soundboard. And here the wood was missing. And it is set in, new wood is set in such a way that the grain is running through. So the width of the new part of the grain has the same width as the original one. And we'll see at least another example. So it's always the same goal, not to cut original wood, not to cut away original substance. That is one of the most important intentions of conservation. So, and in this reconstruction, all the knowledge which we gathered from the original are brought together. You see that the rose, for example, is reconstructed from this fragment, and I can promise that every angle is correct, every part which came out here, these little fragments are put together because very probably this is an old lute rose. And we know the principles of construction of lute roses, so here the rose is complete again. This week on Tuesday we examined the instrument because there is an important project in the Music University where another Viennese harpsichord shall be reconstructed, which is a similar keyboard, and we studied the construction and the jacks and the jack rail and everything, and when putting back a mistake took place. So. C, B, B flat, A, G, and the F. The bracket also is a key. And this, the original and the reconstruction, is probably the earliest harpsichord with a compass of 5 octaves and 1 note. 5 octaves and 1 note, from F to G3. This Viennese bass octave, for example, opens our eyes for details in written music, for example, in Joseph Haydn's so-called Sauschneider capriccio. It's an important capriccio. In this piece you have chord which in normal notation would be like this. You can't play it, yeah? But on this keyboard it is very easy. And if you read such a chord in the autograph, we will see, oh, it's a nonsense. He must have been drunken or crazy or so. No, he had a harpsichord with this special short octave. And so the answer is very easy, and otherwise you can discuss what happened, you can't play, it must be wrong, and so on and so on. No, the instruments were different from today. So you see, what is done in museums is very, very different from what we expect normally from a museum's restorer, conservator. We also have here in the Viennese Collection since 2003 students to become conservator restorer for musical instruments are trained in a special course. And one of the first object was this pantaloon. A pantaloon is something like an early pianoforte. And here again, look how carefully this colleague worked. This part of the soundboard was missing, and the original soundboard was smashed, it was broken and was missing. And you see here the remains of the contour of the broken part. And she didn't cut away any single original part. The same on the keyboard. Look here. Here is the borderline of the old wood and new wood. Old wood, new wood. And very, very carefully, without any losses, the missing parts were replaced. And here again, the original is not in playing conditions. It would be a nonsense to bring a soundboard with such damages by woodworms and microorganisms. It would be a nonsense to bring it into playing conditions. The sound of such a damaged part is uninteresting, it's nothing. And again, by this reason, the pantaloon was reconstructed, and you can study all the musical features on the reconstruction. You have the normal sound of a pantaloon, and a pantaloon is a koto with keyboard. A pantaloon is a koto with keyboard. This would be typical Hackbrett music in Austria. And this was the intention of the maker to make a Hackbrett with keyboard. But this sound is very intensive, and so you can make an arrangement. And this is the piano stop. And you also can imitate a harp, yeah? This type of simple piano was the standard prototype around 1750 and is the predecessor of the Viennese piano building tradition one generation later when Mozart came to Vienna.